had a school system that had not counted those kids since 91, 92, had not accounted for basic education subsidy, nor special education, nor any other programmatic needs of the students. So at a time when academic standards were clearly a movement on the forefront, we had a real problem in Pennsylvania. And we embarked on our goal of fixing the state school finance system. We knew our goal, right from the very, very beginning, was to change the school system. The goal was very clear, the strategies were clear. We were going to get a costing out study introduced. We were going to have constituency building, research, cultivating champions at both the grassroots level and the state level, broader campaign, the governor's support for some budget items, data reports, forums, hearings, conferences, polling. But there was one missing ingredient in it, and it was our messaging. We had to not only articulate the beliefs, the values, the principles, the goals, but we had to reach audiences that we had never reached before. It was no longer good enough to run on our passion and all the years of experience. So a communications firm worked with us on the messages. They helped us, as an outside firm, to talk less about the problem and why it wasn't fair, and to talk more about the impact and the solutions. So they didn't actually write them. We had to work through it because we were a pretty intimidating group. We had a lot of experience, a former legislator in our midst. We had people who had 30 years advocacy at the grassroots level. We had lawyers. And we were told, you're doing it wrong. And so we looked at the core messages, and the first one we came up with, our belief, effective public schools are vital for the success of communities and individuals. We would use these, whether it was a legislator, a grassroots group, the media, anyone we were trying to influence. Then there were educators and policymakers understand what schools need in order to be successful. Then we would talk about the expectations, the academic standards, the highly qualified teachers, and so forth. Then the missing ingredient is to ensure that public schools have a sound statewide school funding system. Then we talked about the problem, and then the solution, and this was our opportunity frame. The release of the costing out study presents an historic opportunity to take this evidence and do something now.
The goal, Sandy's already cited it, we wanted to fix Pennsylvania's school funding system. We have one of the worst in the country in terms of inequity and inadequacy. And secondly, even as we fixed it, we wanted to make sure that when there was no longer a project like this, and maybe even our organizations don't exist, that there would be a public and a policymaker commitment to sustain the effective system that we hope to be able to put into place. Let me just highlight a few of the lessons learned, though. Sandy already emphasized this matter that collaboration is tough. Let me just comment about that, because it is not easy. We have a lot of meetings. When we have this broader campaign of 27 organizations, we have a lot of meetings. People get tired of meetings. You got to keep going to the meetings. You got to keep working together. You got to keep being respectful of one another. Otherwise, the collaboration eventually will fall apart. And secondly, you got to be able to give up a little bit. You can't collaborate and just tell everybody, come support our work and we'll make the decisions. You got to give up a little bit of the control. That doesn't necessarily mean compromising on principle, but it does perhaps mean compromising on strategy and making room for a broader set of ideas. Communications to the network, you got to be clear about what you're asking them to do. I mean, one of the things I learned as a high school politician was people like to be asked. If you don't ask people to do something, chances are they won't do anything. And so with our network, our growing network of organizations and individuals, we've been careful to ask them to do things, show that it will have impact, report back to them, and show that there is a broader network of individuals and organizations that are engaged in this. We were supported by a survey that demonstrated there is public support for this reform effort in Pennsylvania, and that demonstrates that there is an expectation that the legislature will take the responsibility to fix this bad school funding system, and that helped with our messaging. Our messages to policymakers, you got to be clear about the ask. You got to be very specific. I was on the receiving end of this stuff for 24 years. The easiest thing is that people come in with different messages, not asking you to do anything in particular. You can nod, be a good guy, and they go on their way and nothing happens. You got to be specific, and you got to make sure they understand they're going to be held accountable for what they do or what they fail to do. You also need the champions within the General Assembly, within the governor's office, within the administration, folks who will carry your water, because you won't get into the legislative caucuses. You won't necessarily be able to speak at legislative committee meetings. So you need to make sure that you have those internal champions.